Hello, Dr. Baker Jones.
Hello, Neil. How are you? Nice to see
Terrific.
you again.
It's been at least minutes.
Yes. I am glad you were able to join us. Hello to everyone else that's joining us as well. Happy to see you all.
Thank you.
I see quite a few familiar faces.
Buenas noches a todos. Si alguien, alguna persona necesita interpretación en español, si por favor presionan el globo a su parte derecha, baja derecha, con gusto ahí está el servicio disponible.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Talking Equity Atlanta. We're getting started tonight. If you could please join us in a quick roll call. So shout out your school or organization in the chat so we can recognize some of the people here representing our diverse APS student body. Good evening, Washington Cluster from Quentin O'Neill. Okay, we got Board of Education, helping empower youth. MAJ, Partner in Change for all of Atlanta Public Schools. That's a name. Welcome. welcome. As we get started, I am going to, who else? Another MAJ coming off this special ed town talk, IDK. Okay, all righty. Parent Avengers, Hollis Innovation, Booker T. Washington. Welcome, everybody. As we get started, I'm going to read out a few of our meeting norms for this evening. Everyone will remain muted until the breakout rooms actually begin. We have an opportunity for everyone to speak tonight. We'll have breakout rooms that last about 20 minutes, and the APS staff is really just here to listen. We're so excited to hear your insights and your ideas. Also, please be courteous and respectful of everyone's opinions. Lastly, this meeting will be recorded, but it won't be shared out beyond our team. It's just for us to be able to capture some of the notes. As we begin tonight, we'll start with a warm welcome from our board member, Arnetta Baldwin. Please forgive me.
I'll fix that for you. Aretta Baldwin.
I'm so sorry.
It's all good. Good evening, Washington Cluster family. Thank you for joining us tonight for tea. We're talking Equity Atlanta. So I am Aretta Baldwin, and I am your APS board member, and I'm honored to be a part of this relevant and timely conversation. Some board members may join us throughout the conversation, so we'll give them a shout out if they do pop in. But we've all heard the word equity. But tonight, our district leaders will share what that word means for APS and why we believe it should be at the forefront of our work. We also want to hear from you about how we can work together to create a culture that encourages excellence for every student, regardless of whether they are affluent or marginalized, Black, brown, or white, identifying as he, she, or they, or diverse in their ability status. Every student deserves an equitable chance at success. With more, I'd like to introduce Dr. Tawida Baker Jones, our Chief Equity and Social Justice Officer.
Thank you, Board Member Baldwin. And good evening, everyone. I bring greetings on behalf of our superintendent, Dr. Lisa Herring, who cannot join us this evening. And I just want to echo many points that she has raised and shared in sessions past. We know that this past school year hasn't been easy for any of us. Some of our families were managing online learning while working a full-time job. Others struggled to put food on the table as businesses closed and their jobs were lost due to the pandemic. Despite this, each of you still worked hand in hand with APS to make sure that the success of our students remained a top priority. And I, along with Dr. Herring and the APS administration, sincerely thank you. With your engagement and support, we have navigated through uncharted territory successfully and are excited about the year ahead. During Dr. Herring's recent Reimagined cluster conversations, we briefly touched on equity, but tonight we'll talk in more detail and continue the conversation to ensure that every child in APS is ready for post-secondary success, whether that's a four-year college, a junior college, a trade school, or the workforce. We must continue to ensure that each one of them is prepared based on their unique skills and needs. And our center here at the Center for Equity and Social Justice will be a key part of this courageous work. Here's and before I begin, I would actually like to just share a warm welcome and introduction from a few of our Center for Equity and Social Justice team members who prepared a video to introduce themselves to you this evening. And I would like to share that with you all just to highlight some of our dedicated staff who will be partnering with you to advance educational equity in APS. So with that, I'm going to ask Tisha to roll tape.
Meow and greetings.
Hola y bienvenidos.
Bonjour.
Aloha.
Namaste.
Sawabona.
Konnichiwa.
Guten Tag.
Marhaban.
Ciao.
Hujambo. Hello.
My name is Quentin Stroud, the Equity Policy Analyst working at the Center for Equity and Social Justice.
Mi nombre es Joana García y soy la especialista en la comunidad Latinx en el Centro de Equidad y Justicia Social.
My name is Quentin O'Neill, the Coordinator for Supply Diversity with the Center of Equity and Social Justice.
My name is Ashley Reese, and I am the Administrative Manager in the Center for Equity and Social Justice at Atlanta Public Schools.
My name is Larry Wallace. I am the Executive Director of Federal Programs in the Center for Equity and Social Justice here in Atlanta Public Schools.
My name is Deirdre Smith, Organizational Ombuds with the Center for Equity and Social Justice.
My name is Stacy Wyatt. I'm the Executive Director of Equitable Learning Environments at the Center for Equity and Social Justice.
I'm Rhonda Hudson, the Coordinator of Equitable Student Support Services in the Center for Equity and Social Justice.
I am Gina DeVoe. I am the Coordinator of Equitable Schools and Academics in the Center for Equity and Social Justice.
My name is Natasha Speed, Executive Director for Equitable Resource Strategy in the Center for Equity and Social Justice.
My name is Keisha Copeland, and I am the Director of Family Engagement in the Center for Equity and Social Justice.
My name is Katisha Kennebrew, and I'm the Program Director for Equity Strategy in the Center for Equity and Social Justice at Atlanta Public Schools.
I'm looking forward to joining you at T.
Bienvenidos al té.
Welcome to T.
Welcome to Tea.
Welcome to Tea.
Welcome to Tea.
Thank you for joining us for tea.
Welcome to 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 Tea.
Hello, my name is Dr. Tawida Baker-Jones, and I'm the Chief Equity and Social Justice Officer for the Center for Equity and Social Justice at Atlanta Public Schools. Welcome to Tea. All right, thank you for that, Katisha. And so we welcome to Tea, Talking Equity Atlanta, and we're going to go in a little deeper about what equity really means for APS and why this work is so important for us here. As Dr. Herring previously shared, at APS, our mission is for a caring culture of equity, trust, and collaboration. Every student will graduate ready for college, career, and life. Along with Superintendent Herring and APS leaders, we are working closely together to plan and strategize what the work of equity and social justice means for every child. And to do this, we need your help. So let's first look at what we've already committed to doing as an APS family and what our vision is for this work. So our vision in APS is to become a high-performing district where students love to learn, educators inspire, families engage, and the community trusts the system. To bring these words to life, equity must be the through line. And to reach our mission and vision, we must aim to grow each student subgroup, not continuously compare one subgroup against each other. We acknowledge that APS has one of the largest achievement gaps between race and class of students, but we are growing students. Achievement data for all students grew in ELA and math milestone performance by 5% in 2017 and 2019. Black students grew 6% in math and ELA, 5% in ELA between 2017 and 2019, and the reverse trend was true with our Latinx students. Performance for white students grew roughly about 4% in the same subject areas during the same period, and their growth was lower than other groups because their achievement was higher. This table here shows how the additional subgroup students, Asian, ELL, and students with disabilities also grew during that same time period. Overall, throughout the city, the graduation rate from 2019 to 2020 also grew, as you can see from this slide, yet there's still work to be done because there is variation across the board. Here in the Washington cluster, the high school graduation rate increased by 1.3%. So the truth is we are making progress, but our progress must be more than incremental. We must be aggressive in if we are to truly accomplish what we want to accomplish for our children and for all of our children to be successful. And we can only accomplish this through equity. And our lens must maintain an intentional focus on every child through the lens of equity. So what is equity really? Well, at APS, equity is defined as the quality of being just and fair regardless of economic, social, cultural, and human differences amongst persons. To foster a culture of equity, we have to figure out, well, why is equity so important? Equity is important because it encourages excellence for all students and staff. And we believe that equity should be at the forefront. Every student should have the opportunity to come to school and to have access to effective teaching. Our students also deserve to safely and comfortably learn and be who they are. So what is the aim of equity? The aim of equity is to provide students with additional and differentiated resources based on their educational needs. Now, APS takes equity a step further than most districts because our goal is not only to achieve equity, but to achieve social justice. So what is social justice? Social justice is achieved within a school district when the predictive link between demography and outcomes is broken. So when we can take a student dot, for example, whether that student be north of the 20 or south of the 20 in the Washington cluster or in the Grady cluster, we should not be able to predict that student's outcomes based on where they are geographically or based on any other demographic marker or identity marker that student may have. And so what does equity, in order to get there, we must ensure that our instruction is both equitable and socially just. And when we talk about equitable and socially just instruction, what does that actually look like? Well, equitable instruction is learning, and I need you to transition to the next slide, please. Equitable instruction is learning that is grounded in students' experiences because it is engaging, culturally and linguistically affirming, meaningful, and grade level appropriate. And so I'm going to repeat that because we're having some technical difficulties. But equitable instruction is learning that is grounded in students' experiences because it is engaging, culturally affirming, linguistically affirming, meaningful, and grade level appropriate. And when we talk about social justice in educational instructional practices, that requires that our students have a voice in the curriculum and that we're supplementing the curriculum in a way that mitigates race, mitigates class, ability, language, gender, and any other boundary that hinders access to a monocultural curriculum. So that is what social justice education means for us in APS. And so the way that we're going to achieve that is through our work at the Center for Equity and Social Justice. And we're going to be implementing a vision here in the Center for Equity and Social Justice to ensure that the district is providing equitable distribution of resources to meet those goals, that we're also serving as a gateway for your equity concerns and questions, so that the ultimate goal is that we're increasing student growth and access and outcomes across subgroups. So with that, it's time for us to break out and talk equity and hear from you. We're going to break you into breakout groups, and we have a few questions that we want to ask, but we're also going to give you time to share what's top of mind and heart for you as well as we think about equity. We're going to ask our odd number breakout groups to answer questions 1 and 3, our even number breakout groups to answer questions 2 and 4. And then, like I mentioned, we're going to have a third question that's just going to be what's top of mind and top of heart for you as it relates to equity. How can we better service all of our students in the Atlanta Public Schools to meet some of those ideals and some of that vision that I spoke of earlier? In each of your groups, you'll be assigned a member of our Center for Equity and Social Justice. A few of them will be in the room with you, and they will serve as facilitators, note takers, and timekeepers. They are there to listen and to capture your voice. And so without further ado, I'm going to transition you into the breakout room so that we can talk equity. You have 25 minutes, and we'll send a 5-minute warning just to let you know when you're hitting up against a time boundary. So I'm going to ask Quentin to move you into your breakout groups now. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for your candor and your honesty. I had the opportunity to pop into every group and hear some of the rich and valuable dialogue that was taking place. Is that me? Oh, that might be Mary's echo. Can we mute the mics? Thank you. And so what we would like to do is to ensure transparency in this work, because that's key and pivotal to equity. And so we'd like to invite your small group to share 1 or 2 takeaways from your session. So hopefully you selected a presenter. If not, your facilitator can share your takeaways, but we're going to call group 1 just to share out 1 or 2 takeaways that are highlights from your group discussion with the rest of us. That would be very helpful. So group 1, I don't know who.
It would be
Okay.
Byron. If Stroud, you could take Byron off mute. If he still on mute, Byron will be pouring out for us.
Yeah, I am here, but of course I was struggling with, okay, what group was I in? Okay, so very quickly, 1 or 2 things. There were several things that came up, and I'll be very quickly about it. We talked about uplifting the programs of APS, how there are positive things going on in APS, but there's no real communication network to ensure that those things not only reach the parents that are in APS, but just the community members of APS as well. We also talked about how some kids may not be able to afford the name brands and things of that nature, talking about self-worth. But we brought up the fact that there are some of our high school students who actually have their own clothing line. So name brands may not be a big thing anymore. Another takeaway was collaboration is definitely needed. We have always talked about what education is needed, but we never talked about the things outside of education, like the city and the county and the state and all those things that affect education. And then when we talked about what could be done or stopped or continued, or what is needed to fit the graduation characteristics, we brought up and talked about early childhood center, giving our children a solid foundation from the start. That way in middle school and high school, they're no longer playing catch up. They actually have a solid foundation to move from. And then last but not least, as we talked about ensuring that our children feel special and has an affirmation, we must also ensure that our staff, those that are in front of our children every day, feel loved and cared for by the system as well. So those are some solid things that we took away from our conversation.
Thank you, Mr. Amos. Those are awesome and great solid things.
Okay.
Group 2, you're up next.
Yes, and for group 2, amazing, awesome group, we have Casey Benning as our reporter.
So I will too try my best to be brief, and to my group members, I am going to do my best to encapsulate everybody's thoughts. I do not want anybody to feel as though something got left out, so I wanted to just start with that. We had a lot of things that we shared. And so In terms of the first question around what's needed for resources and where we can place those resources for growth around academic achievement, one of the things that came up was the term growth itself, right? So the idea of making sure that our students are positioned for development versus growth. These words can denote different things. And if we're not clear of the definitions, what is that we're really trying to attain or trying to obtain from the students? But even as we look at the idea of development versus growth, we have to also understand the curriculum that has been put in place. We had a phenomenal teacher. So thank you for all the work that you're doing, Kwame. And he talked about there being a new curriculum that was introduced and that it's not as rigorous and relatable, which led us to the conversation around cultural competency and ensuring that our students first are not wrestling with what does this concept mean before we can even figure out how to get them to the answer or to the solution. More resources also include more engaged parents and making sure that's one of our wonderful social workers mentioned and some of our parents on the group as well, that is going to take a comprehensive approach and that we have to make sure that we're getting the parents more engaged, but this also requires transparency. And as we move towards the second question, and that we had around the profile of a graduate for APS, one of the things that I think carries us over is Kwame also mentioning that we have to be prepared and ready for students who have been out of organized structure, out of organized teaching for over a year and a half, and how does that play a part in the type of classroom environment we're gonna have, which leads to, right, a graduation rate. And so we need to be mindful of the fact that there needs to be more counselors in place for the learning loss that all of our students have experienced, and a special emphasis on our special education classes. They are already really experiencing the brunt of this equity gap, and if we're not mindful of that and how we can bring them to where they need to be as we think about some of our other students, then we're going to continue to see this loss just perpetuate itself. The idea around some personal education plans, again, we had Trisha, who's a parent of a special education student, and just mentioned that while they have IEPs, why don't all students have them, right? Why don't all students have things that are going to help them make sure that they are achieving what's necessary for them to graduate? And then also just thinking about training, or maybe training is not the right word, but preparing our students to think critically, to ask questions versus what is happening now, which is training them to answer questions in the form of being able to perform well on a test. And the goal is to get them connected so that they're working cooperatively and not necessarily competitively all the time.
Thank you, Casey, for that. And last but not least, Group 4.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much, Group 4, for your thoughts and insight. I'm actually going to let my colleague, Joanna Garcia, share out our thoughts from Group 4.
Awesome. So I will try to be speedy but brief. I mean, speedy but thorough, because my team had such great points. And so I'm going to start. Somebody actually quoted Mr. Alonzo Krim, and so that we have to be a community of believers. And I thought that was a word, because we have to really galvanize for our students and really create a network for them, a supportive network beyond high school, right? And how are we going to do that for all our students across the board? And how are we going to provide equity from start to end, right? From pre-K all the way to high school and beyond. And that seems to be a reoccurring thought for us. And also that all students can learn, which seems to be something that perhaps is not a shared belief. And so perhaps instead of having that predisposed thought and having all these interventions, we could shift to a culture of enrichment and comprehensive wraparound services. And, the need for high quality staff and teachers and administration, having quality graduate coaches, having the wraparound service, having every child feel safe and having a sense of value and belonging. Those things are important. So
Thank you, Joanna, and thank you, Group 4. And thank you all for your time. Thank you for respecting differing opinions and your willingness to be uncomfortable for the purpose of a good and healthy conversation. Just in closing, to find real solutions on behalf of the students that we serve, we all agree that it'll take hard collaborative work, but also hard collaborative conversations. And you all can help by continuing in engaging with us in the dialogue. This is the start and the beginning of many dialogues to come, and for us to do this work collectively together. One district, one division, and one community cannot undo centuries of systems and structures that none of us created. It's going to take us collaboratively as a city, as a unit, and as a group if we're going to really move the ball for our kids. And I think someone in group 1 or 2 shared it best. Like, you know, there's a lot of issues out there to tackle. We're working to undo systems and centuries of systems and structures that none of us created, as I mentioned. And we're talking about housing, education, many different issues. But what's ours to own, we're going to own, and we're going to do our part, and we're going to do our part together. And so you can help us by continuing the dialogue and completing the survey. Many of you would have gotten this survey in your email when you registered for the T. If you haven't already done so, please complete that survey to amplify your voice. It allows us to drill down a little more deeper into some equity things. We'll also drop that in the chat for folks who might have missed it. Again, equity is at the forefront in Atlanta Public Schools, and it is needed for us to foster a community that encourages excellence for all students and all staff. And so when we reach this ideal, we will truly have equity, and we will truly have social justice for all. Thank you all for attending. I wish you an awesome and amazing evening and weekend ahead. Thank you.